guys, if you find this video helpful, please like, subscribe and press the bell icon for notifications. Today in complex numbers, we will be proving triangle inequality, that it states that the sum of any two sides of a triangle must be greater than or equal to the remaining third side. Now let A, B and C be three sides of a triangle. Then A plus B must be greater than or equal to C. Similarly, B plus C must be greater than or equal to A, or C plus A must be greater than or equals to B. So to prove the triangle inequality, we will be using the following properties. And these properties are: Z times its conjugate is equals to mod of Z square. Conjugate of Z1 plus Z2 is equals to conjugate of Z1 plus conjugate of Z2. Then conjugate of conjugate Z is equals to Z. And conjugate of Z1 Z2 is equals to conjugate of Z1 times conjugate of Z2. Then Z plus conjugate of Z is equals to 2REZ. And mod of conjugate of Z is equals to mod of Z. Now before proving the triangle inequality, let's prove this identity, that is mod of ZW square is equals to mod of Z square times mod of W square. Now to prove this, let's take left hand side, that is mod of ZW square, and it can be written as ZW times conjugate of ZW. Because of the identity Z times conjugate of Z is equals to mod of Z square. So here Z is ZW. Now conjugate of ZW can be written as conjugate of Z times conjugate of W. Again, because of the property conjugate of ZW is equals to conjugate of Z times conjugate of W. Write Z and conjugate of Z together and W and conjugate of W together. And now we know that Z times its conjugate is mod of Z square. Similarly, W times its conjugate is mod of W square. Again, because of the property Z times conjugate of Z is equals to mod of Z square. Therefore, mod of ZW square is equal to mod of Z square times mod of W square. Now let's prove the triangle inequality, that is mod of Z plus W is less than or equal to mod of Z plus mod of W. So to prove this, let's take left hand side and square it. And if we consider Z plus W as Z, then we can write it as Z plus W times conjugate of Z plus W. Because of the identity Z times conjugate of Z is equals to mod of Z square. Now conjugate of Z plus W can be written as conjugate of Z plus conjugate of W. Again, because of the identity conjugate of Z plus W is equals to conjugate of Z plus conjugate of W. Now just multiply and open the bracket and we will get Z conjugate plus ZW conjugate plus WZ conjugate plus WW conjugate. And we know that Z times its conjugate is mod of Z square, and similarly W times its conjugate is mod of W square, and our middle part is ZW conjugate plus WZ conjugate, which we will be solving separately. Now let's take the middle part and try to solve it, and that is Z times conjugate of W plus W times conjugate of Z, and then we can write Z times conjugate of W plus W can be written as conjugate of conjugate W, because of the identity z conjugate of conjugate z is equals to z. Similarly, conjugate of conjugate w is equals to w. Now conjugate of conjugate w times conjugate of z can be written as conjugate of conjugate w times z. Now we can just switch the sides for conjugate of w and z. Then we will get z times conjugate of w plus conjugate of z times conjugate of w. Now if we consider z times conjugate of w as z, then this will be conjugate of z, and it's in the form of z plus conjugate of z. And we know that Rez is equals to z plus conjugate of z by 2. Therefore, z plus conjugate of z is equals to 2 times Rez. So we will write z w conjugate plus conjugate of z times conjugate of w as 2Rez. Here z is z times conjugate of w. Now since 2Re z times conjugate of w will be less than or equal to 2 times modulus of z times conjugate of w, because we know that any real number a will always be less than or equal to its modulus. Now mod of z times conjugate of w can be written as mod of z times mod of conjugate of w because of the identity mod of zw is equals to mod of z times mod of w. Now again, mod of conjugate of w is equal to mod of w because of the identity mod of z is equals to mod of its conjugate. So now we can substitute this value with inequality sign in our above equation, and we will get mod of z plus w square is less than or equal to mod of z square plus 2 times mod of z mod of w plus mod of w square, and this is mod of z plus mod of w whole square. Now take square roots both the sides and we will get mod of z plus w is less than or equal to mod of z plus mod of w. And this is a triangle inequality that says that sum of any two sides of a triangle must be greater than or equal to its third side. Our next topic is De Moivre identity. Thanks for watching.